It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. This is your feel-good breakfast show, Expresso on S3. Now, the dreams of the African people have been so beautifully captured in the Black Panther movies. The hopes and dreams of an African continent becoming self-sufficient, united and respected as a global superpower. Now, independent filmmaker and media practitioner Nash Mercado joins us this morning to talk about a term that you may or may not have heard of in relation to Black Panther, and that is Afrofuturism, and something that I think a lot of us, after seeing the first Black Panther, it was like, wow, okay, this is a possibility of our future that we could be looking at. And you watched the new movie last night as well.
Yeah, I did watch the new movie last night. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Cinematically, it's just amazing what they have done with it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Afrofuturism, as I said earlier on, that
Yeah.
some people might not have heard about this term before, describe it to me. What exactly are we referring to when we talk about Afrofuturism, as it goes even far, it goes far beyond Black Panther, the movie, because we are witnessing it in some form, way, shapes and forms, in reality.
Well, it is a movement in the arts that incorporates elements of Black history, identity, and culture in the creation of works that reflect a futuristic world.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a type of speculative fiction that empowers individuals to think beyond their present circumstances.
Yeah. And indeed, we've seen so many brands latching onto this idea. I remember one of the campaigns that was done that represented African characters with superpowers, but, you know, emanating from what we know, the stories we grew up with, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is the driving philosophy behind this movement?
Well, it's, you know, the stories that are created within the genre are told from the perspective of the African diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a group of people whose history is marred by subjugation. So I think the driving force behind it is hope for a future where one can position himself and be able to think beyond their present circumstances, and hope in a future in which you know, individuals can have agency that they were not able to have in the past, that they were positioned of subjugation and disenfranchisement.
Absolutely. And you talk about individual agency, which hopefully collectively might lead to not just unity, but prosperity on the African continent at large. And we've got organizations like the African Union, to whom I'd hope that mantle and responsibility of the future, charting the future of the continent, is firmly within their sights, right? So what do you, as a creative, as somebody who has an invested and a vested interest in the African continent, what would you like to see that unity look like in the future for Africa?
Well, I was having, you know, within the context of the movie, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about 3 nights ago.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how the question that is asked by the Black Panther movie installments is, what if Africans were at the top of the global order? But a more, a worthier question, he said, was, what if Africans were to create a united body that competed effectively on the global economic arena? So the first step towards this, the future of unity in Africa was made, I think, in 2018, when I think 52 African states became signatories to what is known as the African Free Trade Agreement.
Okay.
This is very important because usually when African countries are negotiating trade terms, there are huge disparities between their foreign trade partners and you know, and their local GDPs, right? Their regional GDPs. I'll give you an example. There is Rwanda. Rwanda is the fastest growing economy, not just on the African continent, but in the world. But Rwanda has a GDP of about $11 billion. Now, compared to one of its trade partners, China, it has a GDP of $17 trillion. So already the negotiating powers there are really uneven. However, if there is a collective of nations coming together, if all the nations in Africa were to come together, to create this body that competes on the global economic arena, our collective GDP currently is $2.9 trillion, right? So though it's still less than that of China and our other trade partners, it kind of makes things better a little. So,
and that's also kind of like given the current restrictions as well. We're not talking about the utopian world where optimization has occurred, innovation has occurred, that free trade economy exists, what that potential could look like from an African perspective.
You know, one of the criticisms that I have with the Wakanda movies, though they are beautiful and you know, they predict this futuristic utopia, is that the success of Wakanda is almost attributed to their isolationism, you know? And I think that's a significant problem because it does not really speak to the unity that we are talking about. Well, one might say, is Wakanda an African state, or is it representative of Africa as a whole?
Yeah, it's a perspective thing.
You know, it's a perspective
in the latter perspective, that's where you want to be sitting.
You know what I mean, yeah. So that's just like one of the things that is uncertain within the world of the movie. Isolationism, we learn from game theory that individual ambition does not serve the common good.
Right.
You know, the best result comes when people in a group make decisions that are best for themselves and the collective. Yeah. So.
Well, here's the hope that such movies and depictions on an artistic level will inspire that group success. You know, we do have mantras and philosophies like Ubuntu that we grew up with, and we know what that means towards our community, the way in which we treat each other, and how that can ultimately lead to the success of all of us. Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts, man. It's always so inspiring to listen to what you think, and especially sharing those thoughts with us from an artistic point of view, because I think that it can play a big role in inspiring all of us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.